I never thought it could happen to me. I was the young woman who successful professionals I looked up to considered a role model and mentor to their young daughters. They would always say, "I want my daughter to be like you when she grows up." Yet it happened to me. Here's what happened to me. It was my first job right out of Georgetown University, and it was honestly the best possible place a young Bahamian could go to launch their career. My interest was retail, and I was scouted to develop their retail department, and I was full of zest, full of life, just, bouncing off the walls. The environment was so open and welcoming, and I met people from all over the world, and one person in particular was a general manager of the highest tier hotel brand at this establishment, and he was a white, middle-aged South African of Portuguese descent. And given my background, having traveled, lived in Southern Africa at the age of 19, my ex-boyfriend was from Mozambique and spoke Portuguese, so I had learned Portuguese. And being Black, I think in addition to that experience that I had, I was exposed to luxury hospitality thanks to my parents, and he took it upon himself to mentor me. And he knew that I was a very ambitious associate and hard worker, putting in the hours and very focused on my career path. And he would send me articles about luxury retail as well as luxury hospitality and different hotels and resorts around the world and what they were doing, and was really trying to invest in my career development. And as a young associate, someone in a position of influence and power in the company takes an interest in your career development. You're like, wow, this is great. Thought it was very professional at first, and then slowly but surely it became more inappropriate. I had a very eclectic style, so sometimes I would my hair was natural, and I would experiment with African head wraps, and really express my style, and very conservatively at that. No cleavage and none of that in the workplace. But he would always pinpoint how great I looked in public amongst my colleagues, which always made me feel very uncomfortable. I remember this one time he said, "Oh, do a little spin for us so we can see how amazing your outfit is today," and just putting me on the spot. And naturally, my personality is not one where I like to have unwarranted, unsolicited attention, and I think that was the beginning of me feeling uncomfortable around him. And as my journey at this establishment progressed, I was promoted and I became the retail buyer for the property, and that was an amazing experience. And I got to travel to LA and Vegas and source all of the merchandise. I met with representatives from Louis Vuitton and different luxury brands who came to the Bahamas seeking a spot at this establishment. And I got an opportunity to work with the different hotel brands that were going to be present. And of course, he was the general manager of the top tier hotel, and he would ask me to do presentations developing the retail program for that particular brand. And one day I had a scheduled meeting with him in his office, brought my laptop with my presentation on it, and as usual, we did a little Portuguese, you know, tudo bem, and all of that. And then I sat down across from him with his desk in between us, turned my laptop so that he could see it while sitting. And, you know, the meeting was going very well. The door was open. You know, people could peek their heads in. People could see, you know, I felt comfortable. And then he asked me, he was like, oh, you know, I can't really see what's on the screen too well. Like, can you just come around the table and, like, show it to me up close? So, you know, I was a little hesitant, but, you know, the door was open. People could walk in, see what was going on, if anything got out of hand. And came around, he was seated, and I was standing, and the laptop was in between us. And I faced the laptop, and he faced the laptop at a slant. And at the end of my presentation, he caressed and patted my butt. And it happened really quickly, and I did not know how to respond. I was in shock. I honestly couldn't believe that he had the audacity to touch me. I started to second guess myself. Did he mean to give me a pat on my back? But you're seated, I'm standing, so my back is, you know, up here, and my butt is clearly down there. So there's, you know, a great distance between my back and my butt. So it was the strangest thing that I second guessed this physical inappropriate behavior from a superior to an associate, you know. And I left the meeting. I didn't react. I held my composure, and I walked out of the office having, you know, held it together, and broke down after leaving the office. I did not tell anyone when it happened. Honestly, I was trying to work out why it happened to me. Why it happened to me in a place where I was supposed to feel safe. I questioned what I had done to cause someone to disrespect my body, my space. And I was really trying to work out all of these questions in my head by myself because I was ashamed. I felt guilty. I was embarrassed. And nothing like this had ever happened to me before. I didn't dress provocatively. I didn't make moves or make myself available to anyone in that office. I actually thought that, you know, the way I carried myself with dignity and class and, you know, sophistication and very conservatively would have protected me from men feeling like they could try me. But no. At one point, I actually tried to confide in a coworker who was a confidant. You know, we had spoken about our careers, life, our ambitions, and we always felt like we could talk to each other about anything that was going on, and it would remain between the two of us. And I wanted to gauge whether I could, in fact, share what had happened to me. And I asked, have you ever been in a situation where guys have touched you inappropriately or harassed you uncomfortably in a sexual manner? And she said no. You know, they know better than to mess with her. She's not that kind of girl who gives off that vibe or energy that they can do that kind of thing with her. I was looking at a mirror image of myself because we were so similar. Ambitious women, outspoken women, women who other women and young girls look up to, women who by society's standards dress conservatively and come from a great background in terms of family and are college educated and are these success stories in the workplace. But I didn't feel comfortable expressing my experience with her because I felt like I would be judged, and that was not a good position to be in. I went on with, you know, work as usual and had a meeting with my mentor who sat on the executive board of the establishment, and we were having a conversation outside, and he said something that triggered that incident, and I broke down crying. And I'm sure he didn't expect that to happen, because what he said, I don't remember the exact words, but it was completely unrelated to sexual assault. It was more of along the lines of, how are you? How are you doing? How has work been going? And it triggered those deep emotions. My mentor was stellar about the situation. He has a daughter. He made me feel validated in my discomfort having had that experience. And he, coming from a legal background as well as sitting on the executive board, had the language to address a situation like this with sensitivity and empathy. And he gave me options as to how I could hold this person responsible, you know, going to HR and making a complaint. And I didn't feel comfortable going to HR because in such a small town community, I felt as though my business would be out in the street and I would be the topic of conversation, and my dignity and the respect that people had for me would diminish. I was way too concerned about what other people would think, and I decided not to take that course of action. And I told him, you know, I just froze in that moment when it happened to me, and I couldn't react. And, you know, he gave me all permission. He's like, you should have slapped the crap out of that guy. But it's crazy. Physical responses in that way are just not naturally a part of the way I respond to things. Like, I've never been in a physical altercation in my whole entire life. Never used these fists. Never had to smack anyone, you know? So I wish I had gone like that and really stood up for myself in that moment, but it was not my natural reaction. And he also addressed this issue of being polite. And I've been raised to be polite. I have great manners. My parents have raised me to show respect to elders, and I think that not knowing how to respond to someone that was older than me in a position of authority with power in the workplace that at the time I thought could control and dictate and influence the trajectory of my career. I wasn't in his department, but he was recruiting me to move into his brand. And that was intimidating for me. And I did not know how to respond. Am I proud of that? Hell no. Most people know me to be an outspoken, independent, very articulate young woman with exposure, experience, parents who are advocates in the community, parents who are public figures and leaders in our community. And that was not my normal mode of operation. I was silenced. My voice had gone, and I was shocked. I actually began to doubt my own memory and my own recollection of what happened to me. And that was a form of suppression and not wanting to face what happened, to call what happened by its name: sexual assault in the workplace. That experience changed me. I went from being so stylish, so well put together, so the epitome of someone you would see in fashion, style, and retail departments, to someone that wore her glasses every day. I wear glasses. I have contacts in right now. I prefer to wear contacts because it opens up my face. When I don't feel like trying, I wear my glasses. I wore no makeup every day. I wore loose-fitting clothing. I tried to blend in so much as to not stand out, to not attract any attention from anyone, because I blamed myself that, oh, because I looked attractive, I was targeted. But no, that is not why I was targeted. And it took a lot of conversation with finally opening up to my parents to really understand why it happened to me. And my dad shed a lot of light on his take on why it could have happened to me and why it did happen to me. Male privilege. The objectification of women and their body. The idea that women are meant to be conquered. I was a conquest for him. I was someone who was an anomaly for him. A black, ambitious, young woman from a well-to-do background who had traveled, who had experienced luxury hospitality, who could speak the language of Portuguese, who was this, global thinker, who had understood what it was like to live in Southern Africa. And I was Bahamian. He had never met anyone like me before. And even though he was married, even though he had a kid, I was a challenge for him. And I did not understand how intricate of a web he wove around trying to understand me. From having conversations about my past experiences and where I've lived and where I went to school, what my family is like, to wanting to help me grow professionally. If that's not grooming, I don't know what is. The guise of wanting to be my mentor, although I had an amazing mentor already. It's incredible the lengths to which men will go to conquer women who show no interest in them. And when I did not pick up on the advances, he took that opportunity to physically invade my space. Sometimes you just don't know how you will respond in a situation that you've never been in before. And sometimes your response when that situation occurs will surprise you, it will shock you, it will disappoint you. And if that does happen, the most important thing you can do is learn from that experience and try and equip yourself with the tools that you need to stand up for yourself next time. Have the language to speak up for yourself. Have the physical strength to protect yourself. We need to have these conversations about how we can equip ourselves with the skills, the tools, the language to meet these circumstances that are very real and present in our communities, whether you be from the Bahamas, from Botswana, from Singapore, from the United States, or Brazil. It's happening all over the world, and it has been happening for centuries. And I had to learn the language. Having been in a situation where I was silenced and didn't know how to respond, I did role plays with my family members. And now I want to take it a step further and actually take a self-defense class. I want to be prepared. I want to be able to use my strength, my physical strength, in a reactive, innate way that is like second nature to me in those very high adrenaline fight or flight scenarios. Let's get this clear. Your dress code does not give anyone the right to sexually assault your body. Why do we think it does? A woman who is conservatively dressed still stands the same risk as someone who is not. It happened to me. So let's stop telling our young women that if you stop being so fast, if you stop being so womanish, if you stop dressing so skimpy, then maybe a man won't disrespect you. Why don't we start to have these conversations with our young men? Raise our young men to understand respect for body, for self. Just because you have the ability to does not mean you have the right to. Our culture is very misogynistic, and it favors men with power who are white, who are well-to-do, and women have to try extra hard. Don't do this, don't do that. What can I do? I should have the same rights as a male. I want to hear everyone get involved. We need a communal response in order to get the conversation going, in order to address the issues that we have in our communities. No one should feel uncomfortable in the workplace. The way you dress should not determine how people treat you, despite what society has made us believe. You are a human being that deserves respect, a human being that has dignity, a human being that can say yes or no, and that yes or no, or that no response at all should be respected. And on that note, thanks for joining me.